Here we go. September 21st, Friday, the process show. And we have an actual process to discuss today. And it's something that's come up lately in our Slack chat, thanks to my co host, Adam. What are your thoughts now on stacking as we are closing out this MLB season?
So on DraftKings and Fantasy Draft, not FanDuel because their scoring is just different and it lends itself more to increased correlation because of runs and RBIs and stuff being weighted heavier.
Yeah.
But on DraftKings and Fantasy Draft, where home runs really are king, and you're basically home run hunting in tournaments. I've been thinking, and like we talked about, I don't have numbers to back this up. But this time of the year, I think that it makes sense to get away from full stacks a bit in tournaments because you're with the expanded rosters, you have so many hitters available to pinch hit when games get out of hand. And one of the reasons, or the main reason, that you stack in tournaments, like obviously you increase your correlation when a team goes off, but you're just trying to get that 1% outcome where a team just goes absolutely nuts and you have as many players as possible from that team. But that upside's kind of capped if, as is a lot of cases, when a team goes off like that to win you a tournament, it's a non-competitive game late in the game. You're seeing these teams just swap out, basically global swap like their entire starting lineup when they come up in the seventh, eighth, ninth innings. They're just bringing in guys off the bench to, if it's a playoff team, to rest their starters and prevent them from getting injured. If it's not a playoff team, just to see more of their minor leaguers that they called up. And I think it's leading to most nights lower scores in tournaments. But we know that as far as absolute ceiling goes, you have a higher absolute ceiling if you don't stack, because it's just really, really unusual to get the top scorer at five different positions from the same team.
Right.
But you have a higher likelihood of hitting like a 75th or 80th percentile, whatever, if you do stack because of the correlation. So I think that obviously for most of the season, like, everyone stacks now in baseball, but this time of the year, I just think that because of the pinch hit risk when your team does go off, combined with the fact that bullpens are deeper, so teams are able to rest their good arms easier, and they just have a lot of they have more matchup options throughout games. I wouldn't be surprised if the effectiveness of stacks and the upside of stacks is a bit lower this time of the year than it is for most of the season. And then you have everyone still stacking. I mean, it's just such an accepted practice in MLB tournaments now. No, everyone does it without even thinking about it, that I think you can maybe get an edge by being contrarian and just not stacking on DraftKings and chasing home runs. Obviously you're still going to get natural mini stacks because a lot of times you have multiple hitters from the same team in a really good spot, but not forcing these 5-man stacks where you're ending up on similar roster constructions to the rest of the field. It lets you play the best hitters. It also lets you naturally be contrarian in your roster construction, so you don't have to worry about pivoting off of plays because they're too popular, even though you think it's a really good play or whatever. I just think it's an approach that's pretty interesting this time of year. And anecdotally, just kind of looking at the tops of the leaderboards lately, it has been winning a lot more than it seemed like earlier in the year.
So, would you be advocating like not setting any stack rules whatsoever and taking it as it goes, or maybe just setting like a 3-man and a 2-man and letting the rest rip out as it goes?
Yeah, I mean, I think either one is fine. Like, you're still, because there's going to be so many times where you have two or three hitters from a team that are some of the best scorers on the slate. It's just like that fourth and fifth guy that I think getting rid of this time of the year maybe gives you more upside. So I don't think that you necessarily need to force any sort of stack, but I don't think many stacks are bad. I think it's just that getting away from the full stacks and being contrarian in that way makes a lot of sense this time of year.
I think I completely agree with you. And I have a piece of information that is going to be a caveat to that I think you're going to find interesting. So,
Okay.
I've been thinking about this since you mentioned it, either yesterday or 2 days ago in Slack, or at least that's when the first time that I saw it. And it made perfect sense to me just because I assumed as more people are playing in an individual game, the the chance of getting all 5 of the guys that stay in the game significantly lower. So today when we were talking about it, I looked up on FanGraphs the amount of pinch hitters and pinch runners that have been used for each team, and it's really dramatic. So I have the splits leaderboard up from FanGraphs right now. Last 30 days, just pinch hit plate appearances, and it's really wide. So a team like the
Oh wow.
Dodgers have 73 pinch hit plate appearances in the past 30 days. The Royals have 7. So I think using this information could help a little bit as well, where it seems like just, you know, I'm obviously just jumping to conclusions, but the Dodgers seem like a team that you wouldn't want a 5-man stack if they're going to get to 73 plate appearances from a pinch hit perspective. Whereas the Royals don't seem to be making a ton of late game changes. I don't know if I'm reading too much into that, but I think that there are teams here, Dodgers, Phillies, Brewers, Nats, that seem to be doing it a lot more than others.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense even just looking at the construction of those teams. I mean, even outside of this time of the year, we've talked a lot about the Dodgers pinch hitting, frequently. They have such a deep bench. Same with Milwaukee, especially since the trade deadline. The Cubs do it a lot. So yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense too. And then also, for the most part, the teams at the bottom, with a couple exceptions, they're teams that don't regularly blow teams out. So they're not gonna be in those situations where we're not gonna have much data where they're in those situations where they're up by 8 runs in the eighth.
Absolutely.
Which also goes back to the caveat that I mentioned in Slack as far as stacking goes. I think game stacks still make a ton of sense.
Yeah.
If you want to do doing like a 5-3 or a 4-4 or whatever of game stacks, normally that's something that in baseball I don't really care about. Like football, obviously game stack, like the other team, there's very positive correlation in football between team A scoring a ton of points and the team that they're playing also scoring a lot of points. Normally that's not really the case in baseball, and it's still not the case as far as Kansas City scoring a lot of runs doesn't make the Tigers more likely to score runs against them. But
Sure.
I think that game stacking takes away all the concerns we just talked about, because if you get a game like you got last night where the Tigers score 11 runs, but they also give up 8 to Kansas City, it's still a really competitive game. And they're not they're not likely to just swap everyone out. So I think game stacks still make a ton of sense.
But I would agree. And in the chat, Dana Forden mentioned, and Will have mentioned that we're going to see more pinch hit appearances for NL teams than AL teams.
Right.
So naturally, the Royals are going to be lower and the Dodgers are going to be higher just because of the league they play in and the fact that there is pitching involved.
Right.
Like the highest AL team is Oakland at 15.
And they've, I think, had 2 or 3 blowouts in the last week.
Yeah.
They were one of the teams that actually got me thinking about it, because I think it might have been 2 days in a row. I know one day they were one of the teams, it was like them in Seattle, that they were the teams that you would guess you needed to stack to win a GPP. But in the 8th and 9th inning, they just swapped out everyone. And you ended up with the guy who won tournaments, just being a non-stacked lineup, while you had all these Oakland and Seattle stacks, 10 points back because they missed out on those, that last inning.
And that's something that we could check as well in the splits leaderboard. I can just do 6, 7, 8, 9 extras.
Yeah, that's information.
So, it's not. I don't expect it to change all that much. Oakland at 14th, but
Toronto up to 13th.
Yeah, and that's sort of the way you want to look at it. You want to look at the extremes on the NL side and then the extremes on the AL side. So Toronto, Oakland, Boston, Seattle, teams that you might be better off just having Betts and JD instead of Betts and JD and Devers and X.
Right.
I like it.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess full disclosure, and I mentioned this in Slack earlier too, I am not the biggest stacking proponent anyway on DraftKings, so it doesn't take a lot for me to be willing to go the other way and stop doing it. Now with the idea that it might be a little bit less effective this time of year. I'd kind of been going back and forth with the idea all season long that with stacking being so prevalent on DraftKings, and DraftKings being a site that weights home runs so much more than RBIs and runs, that you maybe, if you're playing a bunch of lineups and you can actually mix and match and get a bunch of different combos of like all your favorite hitters,
Yeah.
that you might actually be better off doing that on DraftKings, even though it's not the common practice. I didn't test it, and I didn't really have the balls to do it most of the season. But so keeping that in mind, like it's still not that hard to sway my opinion towards not stacking this time of the year. Whereas people who believe stronger in DraftKings stacks, it's going to be harder.
Yeah, I think on a slate size will make a huge difference as well. On a day like today with 28 team options, I'm going to still want to have at the minimum a decent amount of 4-man stacks, because we're still looking to catch that outlier game compared to whether we have like a 6-game slate where you'll naturally be overlapping in games more. I think that you can just pick and choose 2- and 3-man combos in that regard.
Yeah, that's definitely true too. Like it's riskier not to stack on a slate where there's 28 teams than 12.
Because if you it's not going to matter what's getting pinch hit for if the Cardinals have 15 runs today.
Right.
You'll want to have 5 of those dudes almost assuredly, especially if they're coming in with dongs.
Right.
I like the thought process, though, particularly on DraftKings. Like you said, FanDuel, a very different beast for scoring. That's probably something, not really enough time left in the year to go into the scoring intricacies between the two sites, but they are very different. They do require a different structure, and it's not just because of FanDuel having a utility slot and stuff like that. It's more the scoring of individual categories themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I guess just process wise, if you are deciding to forego stacks on DraftKings, at least for me, it completely changes my daily process too. Like instead of just taking my projections, like when I'm crunching a bunch of lineups with stacks, I don't really take that many hitters out of my player pool. I'll cap their exposure if I'm getting too much of guys that I don't really love, but I don't really take that many guys out. But if I'm not stacking, I narrow my player pool down a lot, because I don't want, if I'm playing, 50 lineups, I don't want 1 or 2, hitters that I have no interest in like every single lineup, like mix and match. So I do narrow down my player pool a lot and try and get it to what I think are the best guys in each price range, so that if I'm right, I have as many chances as possible at getting all those guys together. So it involves it involves for me just a lot more going through like pitch type data, for hitters against pitchers, and digging more into hitters than I normally would.
No, I like it. I have all my stuff in Rewind for yesterday still. So I'm going to do a crunch with just a 3-man stack set with a 2-man stack. So trying to keep it much smaller than the 5s. I'd like to see just how it shakes out based on everything that I had going into yesterday.
Yeah, I wish I still had mine, because I cut back and only played 20 lineups last night, and I just ended up without, like, I didn't get my guys mixed and matched correctly, but I could have pretty easily had some really high scoring lineups, I think. So I wish I had like my player pool and stuff still available.
Yeah. Let's see what we're getting so far. It's still even giving me some 4-man stacks. That's how good the Royals, Indians, and Nats were on paper yesterday. Nats obviously not so great in the end. Dreadful. Almost got 150 lines, so we'll all check it out here. I can't wait to find out that I would have had 290 points on DK or something ridiculous. Then I light the house on fire. All right, there's 150 lines. Highest actual score, 211.6.
That would have been up there in the $10.
Let's see where that would have been in the mini max yesterday. Oh, actually, well, I have it in the 4-seamer open. It would have been 211.6 would have been third in the 4-seamer yesterday.
It was 211.6.
Yep.
You would have tied for 6th in the $10, the extra inning.
And in the mini max would have been alone in 9th. That would have been a Scherzer Jeff Brigham line, clearly. And that got me a 3-man Tiger stack with a 2-man Moncada, Narvaez, V-Mart, Hunter Dozier, Lindor, Malik Smith. But I did have a couple lines then over 200. Interesting. I like it. I'm going to take a look at the day before that. We'll see where it stands out. I mean, this is the type of exercise that people should be doing too. If you have these type of thoughts, lineup rewind on Fantasy Cruncher, whether you're an Awesemo.com member or not, is free. I spend a ton of time in here trying to go back, see what I did right, see what I did wrong. If I find a process that seemed to work for a particular day, find a day that's comparable to that, go back to that particular day, run another crunch, see how those lines shake out. If you get a couple days with the same process, similar structure, you can know pretty quickly that you're probably on to something.
Yeah, for sure. I'm actually, while you're doing that, I'm seeing if I can quickly get like my player pool from yesterday back, because I'm just interested how it would have done.
Alrighty.
Obviously, won't have my projections, but
I've got 2 days ago. We could check that out as well. Let me just make sure the pitchers don't have anything weird in it, because I know that triple thumbs up Cole Hamels.
Oh God, yeah. I forgot. I'd already blacked that day out.
Let's not talk about it. All right, so let's try this again for September 19th. We'll get the DraftKings contest data out now. We'll check out the $10 extra inning. Top score from 2 days ago was 205.05. So that's the mark that we're trying to hit. Basically, anything over 200, and we're going to be looking pretty tasty. I can't wait to run this out here tonight and just get my clock cleaned.
Oh, yeah. No question.
Because
I mean, that's like last night. Last night was the first night I tried it at all, and of course the Tigers-Orioles game is like 9-6 in the second inning. I was like, okay, well, not going to happen tonight.
And we're basically like the opposite of King Midas at this point, where everything we touch goes to shit when we talk about it. So,
one thing you mentioned though that I think is a really good point though with lineup rewind is using it to do stuff like this and just try and think outside the box and be creative. Like there's so much being made right now, and to an extent it makes sense, like I get it, but there's so much being made about like what did the top players do and how can I like recreate their process. And to me, sure, that makes sense. Like if guys are winning every night, you should be paying attention to what they do, but I don't want to be like a less efficient version of Awesemo. I want to be better than him.
So do I.
You're right. And so just basically saying like, okay, what's this guy's strategies, let me mimic them, isn't, I don't think the best way to go about this stuff. Like think about how you can do things that other people aren't doing and then figure out if you think it's effective or not.
Well, it didn't go well for me. It went so poorly on this crunch that I feel like I have the settings wrong. I mean, the high score in that tournament for 2 days ago was, like we said, just over 200. And the highest actual that I got on a 3-2 stack was 140. That
Yikes.
just feels shockingly wrong that not one single setup here caught. And like I had pitching that was Carrasco and Archer and Gio, and even Erlin at 4,611 was fine. What bats went off?
That was Oakland went off, Seattle went off.
Yeah, Yankees went off. It's the Luke Voit game. I had one line of Luke Voit. I feel like I'm missing a setting here. That just seems to be off from the high score by 70 fantasy points with relatively low like player caps is kind of crazy to me. 3 players, 2 players.
Especially because that was a night that a stack didn't win, so it's not like some random stack went nuts.
It just seems like dramatically high. Randomness is fine. Unique players is fine. Shit, I just think it's I just think it was bad. Good gracious. All right, I'm gonna go back one more day, take another look at it. Emerson in chat. Do I need a membership for Cruncher? You need a Okay, this is a complicated answer. You do not need a membership to Osimo or Fantasy Cruncher to use the lineup rewind tool as I'm using it. This is a free tool to everyone. If you have an Osimo.com membership right now, you can use Fantasy Cruncher for free. It will be a paid add-on soon. Got to get this win. Josh, you should start an ice company. I don't even know what that could possibly mean. I truly don't. Did I play on the 18th? I guess it won't matter all that much. I can use the Fantasy Cruncher projections for the rewind. I can't remember like when I got home and when I did anything. Yeah, I didn't think I played. So we're looking at okay, so this is a really good example. 14 game slate. We'll use the Fantasy Cruncher projections and we'll set some generic limits. So on a 14 game slate, I'm going to go 3 uniques. I'm going to do 49,000 as my salary. Do you use randomness?
I do not.
Okay. Oh.
I adjust my exposures for like every individual player.
I think they're implying that I'm on a cold streak, and that's why I should start an ice company. I won money yesterday. Swing from it. I had a decent day. I'm not. It's the best day I've had in a while. So I'm heating up. I'm melting all that ice. You should call me the heater. I should start a heating company. Yeah, that's what you get. Okay. Ooh. Okay, try this. You should start a business where you make bad picks. Damn, man.
Fade the touts.
Yeah, I guess. Okay, so let's set some team stack parameters here, if you want. Do we want to do a 3 and a 2, or 3 2s, or none of this at all? I'm being generic with this just to test it.
Yeah, I would say either a 3-man, like, and then 5 random guys, like 5 one-offs.
Okay.
Is, I think, kind of interesting. Or 3 and 2.
If I said 10% cap for teams on a 14 game slate, do you think that's reasonable, or would you want to go higher or lower?
I usually go around there.
Okay. Let's just do a 3-man stack, 10%, and let everything else fall wherever it wants. I'm thinking maybe 30% cap on hitters and pitchers.
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
Okay. Let's do 30. I go a little bit higher for pitchers since we obviously have to have 2. Let's just see where this shakes out. 150 lines. At the minimum, we're getting a 3-man stack. This is for September 18th. September 18th in the $10 extra inning, top score 184. I assume that this is going to be a better strategy for low scoring nights.
Right, yeah. Yeah, because I mean, that's the whole issue with playing one-offs. Like, even though it gives you a higher absolute ceiling, it's just so hard to actually hit the perfect lineup. But if stacks aren't coming through and putting up 240, they're putting up 200, it's a lot easier to hit that.
Right. 18th. So yeah, 184 took down the extra inning. Here comes the 200 burger. Lots of Baez. So the winning lineup had, well, Josh James and Jameson Taillon. But
no, it was that.
Yeah. Trout, Baez, Acuna, Joey Wendell. These are guys that should probably pop up. So it'll be interesting to see if we get that sort of combination. We're at 100. Ooh, okay. Top 2 exposed players just on the settings that I entered right now. Josh James, Jameson Taillon.
That's a good start.
We'll see. I had all the hitters on the last one, and I missed the top score by 70. So we'll see how this shakes out. All right, 50 lines. Sorted by actual score. Highest score, 162. So we're a bit off the mark. We would have been 162.15 would get us to 42nd in the extra inning, which would have paid out $70.
So I just went through for yesterday, and as best as I can remember, I recreated my player pool. Um, I'm just using what the hell? I'm just using Fantasy Cruncher projections, which are way different than mine, obviously. But I capped my pitchers at I think what I had them at yesterday, and then I have all the hitters capped at like 30, which is different than yesterday. But I don't have time to do that.
Okay.
Um, so I'm trying to see. I'm not stacking anything, but I just want to see like with my player pool what ended up, what I could have done.
I'm really anxious to hear this now. I
But for
love
some
playing
reason,
around in lineup rewind.
I know what I did. I need I need the cap hitters at 40%. I think because I'm not getting enough lineups.
Okay.
Yeah, this is something I definitely won't do enough of.
I just think it's fun to go back and like get a lineup that popped and be like, oh, okay. Like even if this is just
Right.
random right now, I got a lineup that won this tournament. Like
Exactly.
let's see if this process wins tournaments on different days. So far, nothing interesting. I went to 3 and 2. I'm not getting anything of value yet. All just in the hundreds. Ooh, there's a 164.15, which is higher now. That would have put us 32nd. And you get just unique guys, Tyon and James again, but you get Jose Ramirez and Turner, Bryant, Harper, Daniel Murphy. Like, I mean, you can get so many talented one-off guys that if it hits, not a lot of these guys end up getting tons of ownership
Right.
because too
So
many people
my
are stacking
lineups.
and you don't get to guys like Trout as much as you probably should.
This is going to end up being a pretty not great like example because Fantasy Cruncher's projections are entirely different than mine were yesterday.
Yeah.
Like I had like 85% Scherzer, and right now it's giving me none. I had like 35% Cody Reed, and it's giving me like none.
Yeah, my
So
65% Cody Reed yesterday played out pretty perfectly.
nice. Yeah, I think I ended up at like 35 Reed, 30 Brigham. I think I had like 15 Vargas, and then spread out the rest. So yeah, I'm just stopping it at 50 because the projections are so much different than mine. It's gonna kind of be useless. But
I'm having trouble
my
having
whole
anything break out at 3-man stacks.
what'd you say?
I'm having trouble getting anything to break out at a 3-man stack. Got to 164.75, which I think is going to be the highest. And that would have put us at 27th in the extra inning. So I mean that's viable. You're in shouting distance. That's one additional solid hit, a double with runners on or something, and you're sniffing the top of the leaderboard.
I'm making Max's projection 45 so that I actually get him in lineups.
Yeah, there you go.
And maybe we'll because that should give me the kind of the grouping that or the roster construction I was going with. It's still giving me 0 Scherzer. I have no my settings must be wrong or something. I don't know how I can project him for 45 points and not get any. Oh, because I have it set on. Okay,
You figure it out.
I had it set on. Yeah, I had it set on Fantasy Cruncher projections, so me projecting him for 45 didn't make a difference.
166.75 is the highest we got to in this little process, and that would have been 23rd for this particular day. This was another 14 gamer, so I think it's an interesting way to look at it. I think what I want to do is a 4-man stack. I think dropping down from the max 5 is probably best and use everybody else in a one-off scenario. And I think I want to have more individual hitters. So if I have a 10% chance of being in, or a 10% max 5-man stack, I'm only going to go to 25% hitters. And I think that's probably, I wouldn't want to have anybody more than 25% on a 14-game slate from the hitting side.
Yeah. That's one thing that I also do a little bit differently, because like of cutting down my player pool so much more. Like I go more by position. Like yesterday, I capped that. I maxed out Moncada and Trey Turner at like 40% each, just because I thought they were both pretty clearly the top plays. But then in the outfield, I maxed everyone at like 20% or something because there were just so many more plays.
Sure. I wish I had the ability to manage that better than I do.
Yeah, it's a pain. And at least for me, it always ends up feeling kind of arbitrary, which I don't like.
That's the worst
So
feeling
this
in the
this
world to me.
yeah. This crunch yesterday, I think, should be more representative of at least what I did because it's my player pool. The hitter ownerships are different than I used, but the pitcher ownerships are about the same, and I'm getting the same roster constructions now. So
Oh, nice.
I think it should be pretty representative.
Cool.
The one difference is like I'm gonna end up with more, I think, with higher exposure to a lot of the cheaper guys. Like I capped Rosel Herrera, 10%. I capped Ronnie Rodriguez at like 15. I'm probably end up with like closer to 30 based on these projections. But
Yeah, the new DK guys that are priced in like the mid twos are throwing an interesting wrench into analysis
yeah,
because they're naturally on a point per dollar basis going to be the best plays of the slate by
right,
really any measure. It's hard for them to not be.
right. Yeah, so I mean, this is something that after the show, I might actually go in and try and recreate what I'd done with my actual ownership caps, just because I'm curious. It would obviously take too long to do right now, but it's the kind of thing that if you're playing around with different ideas on your own, just go in and spend some time doing it. Think outside the box, see what you can come up with, and how it works out over different slates.
Yeah, 164.75 seems to be as high as I can get. I can't get into this 180 section.
That was at the tie on day.
Yeah. And the leader got 184 with the 3% owned Jorge Alfaro going for 28 fantasy points. That's going to be tough. I mean, this is Trout, Baez, Alfaro, Joey Wendell, 4 guys over 20, all 4 guys on different teams.
All right, so that crunch just finished for yesterday with my player pool. Hitters capped at 40%, capped Scherzer at 100%, and then like 35% Reed, 30% Brigham, 15% caps on Vargas, Gavilio, and Chirinos. My highest scoring lineup out of these 150 was 198.45.
That's for yesterday?
So a little lower than yours. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so a little lower than yours.
Not to change the subject here, but in the chat, California Cool said, Karl Anthony Towns just said he won't sign an extension until Butler is gone.
Wow.
I thought that was kind of relevant to talk about. Not that that has anything to do with a DFS process, but holy shit.
Yeah, there's been a bunch of weird stuff coming out. Yeah, so on this one, 198, but I did just notice, and like I had said, it's different because like so many of the cheap hitters are going to be overexposed because of the ownership caps that I used just now. 33% of the lineups I just made had Tucker Barnhart with a 0, so that's not really going to help too much.
Would you have had 33% Tucker Barnhart?
I had him capped at 10% last night.
There you go. That'll do it. Ooh. I went with just two separate 2-man stacks at the minimum. I got a 174.75 here, which would have been 5th in the extra innings in the 14-game slate from Tuesday.
Wow, and that was with, you said, a 3-man stack?
Just 2 2s.
Okay, 2 2s.
And again, this is, you can't just jump to the conclusion of like, oh, well, this shit worked. Like you're bound to catch it. But when you can catch an outlier like that, that's the time where I would want to go to my next 14-game slate and redo the exact same thing that I'm doing to see if you get another outlier similarly. And that's when you start to know that like the structure is working. See if I got anything higher than that. I doubt that I did. 174.75 would have been the highest that I got. But 5th in that tournament would have paid out a crisp $2,000.
That would be pretty solid.
You would have been positive money without question. 1,500 to max this tournament. So
I'm
right
going through,
away.
and I'm like fairly accurately adjusting my ownership caps now. Like I'm not going to be done in the next couple of minutes, but I'll
Right.
just run it at some point during the show and see how it ends up.
So with chat, um, I know this is something maybe not the most interesting thing to be doing on September 21st with 2 weeks to go in the baseball season, but I think something like this is applicable across all the sports. So,
Yeah.
are there any strategies or anything that you guys have thought from a chat perspective that you would want us to take a look at? Theories where we can go back and recrunch and see sort of how that lines up. Where would we have had another 14 gamer?
Play Friday.
Yeah, probably Friday the 14th.
Yeah, and it's definitely something that translates across sports. Obviously, different strategies, but
Yeah.
just going back and figuring out what works and how you can be different.
So this is a 15 gamer from last Friday, but I'm going to pop that in here, do two-man stacks, 15% max for both. We'll see how that comes out. No more than 25% exposure on a hitter. Definitely want to make sure you get a lot of combinations of hitters. I think that's the most important piece for me now.
Yeah. I think, a lot of combos, but I want like a tighter player pool.
Yeah, agreed. California Cool says, can you tell me what days I should roster VMart? I'm not sure when his roids kick in.
That pissed me off yesterday. Like I took him out of my player pool because I was like, there's just no way I want VMart as a one-off in any lineup ever. And like luckily Hunter Dozier ended up beating him anyway, but he had like 14 points through 3 innings and wasn't really fun.
Okay, there's no way that I should be getting Fantasy Cruncher. You gotta be better here. I can't be getting 35% Connor Sedzik or whatever the shit his name is. How is that even? Because he was 4,000. I'm gonna let that rip, but I don't trust it. All right, this was September 14th. So we're looking at a top score in the extra inning of 228. That's healthy. What went crazy here? That'd be a good thing to pay attention to. Eflin Tanaka is the combo of pitching at the top. Althair with the double dong day. Trey Mancini with the double dong day.
Oh, that day, yeah. All the cheap hitting.
So Althair was 6.5% owned in that tournament. He's going to be the guy that we want to pay attention to the most. Getting him will be essential to getting to the top. You're clearly not going to win the tournament without him. And I believe we don't have him at all. So, yay. Quite the exercise. Yeah, he's not popping up at all. Lots of everybody else on that team, though. Yeah, you're not winning the tournament if a guy goes double dong for 42 fantasy points on DK. You're probably going to need him. Especially if he's 6% owned. You can get away from it if he's 1%, but... T McB. Talk to Dave. Can you ask him in the next update? Can you add a manual number entry field to the slider for create X more lineups? I hate trying to slide. Yeah, I agree. I would like to be able to type in a number there too. Just when you want 10 and you just keep trying to drag it and you get 9 and then 11 and then 9 and 11 and then all you want to do is stab someone.
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day actually.
Eminson says, what percentage of stack do you use for a 3-team stack? If you're saying that you just want to stack Detroit, the Mets, and Philly in your example, then you would set the 3 of them for 34% across. If you wanted to guarantee that you were only getting those 3 teams in your stack, you would set all 3 of them to 34%. Unless I'm misunderstanding you.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what you meant.
I'm pretty sure I'm right. All right, so from last Friday, highest actual score 160, which would have got your clock cleaned. But we're also getting 33% Connor Sadzik, and that is just a preposterous. Like you would never do that.
Wouldn't have been
What?
Right. He probably you would have played 0%, I would assume.
Yeah, I'm gonna uncheck him and Diego Castillo and guys where it's not about the process in that sort of scenario. These are guys that are unplayable.
Right.
It's not benefit of hindsight type stuff. No one's running out 30% of the guy that's only going to go an inning and a third.
Right.
Will, do you guys have a good way using Fantasy Cruncher to get different lineup constructions in the same crunch? Yeah, you want to set uniques or randomness, one of the two. But yeah.
Okay, so I just won the I think. No, I got second in the extra inning last night with this. So I just went through and, as best I could remember, capped each hitter at the actual exposure I had them capped at yesterday.
Okay.
And made my player pool what it was. Still using Fantasy Cruncher projections, but I was able to get 133 lineups with 3 uniques, and my highest scoring was 219.45.
There you go. Wait, what were the settings again?
3 uniques, no stack, and then I used the same player pool I used yesterday. I used as close to the same exposures as I can remember. Though the difference would be, like, I used Fantasy Cruncher projections, so I know they were higher on the Yankees than I was.
Yeah, they're generally going to be very different. Here's a test for you. Set it to 5 uniques.
Okay.
Since your exposures are probably good, I'm curious to see if the added differentiation across the lines will help.
I'm obviously going to get less lineups.
Yeah.
Because I didn't get 150 this time. And it'll probably take a minute because my computer sucks.
California Cool back with another T-Wolves rumor. Not entirely sure if this one is true, but he says, haha, latest T-Wolves rumor. Butler was smashing Cat's lady. Yeah, I don't know about that one, but stands to reason Towns will probably be a bit salty about it.
The Delonte West, LeBron James part 2.
That one's probably worse.
Yeah, that one's definitely worse.
Delonte West is begging for change outside of a gas station now. It didn't make his career go any better.
Yeah, Delonte West is from like the same area as me. He went to like the rival high school I went to. Different years though.
Wait, which would be where?
Prince George's County, Maryland.
Oh, okay. I just know that he went to St. Joe's then.
Yeah.
But I didn't know if you were originally from like southeastern PA, because if he went to St. Joe's, my first thought was like how he's probably from somewhere in southeastern Pennsylvania, but obviously Maryland is going to be pretty close anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Damn, Butler. Talk about just coming into a team and putting your stamp on it. Like, you think Karl Anthony Towns is the centerpiece of this team, everybody? Well, I'm going to nail his girl.
Right.
The balls on him, man. Look, I get there's probably not a lot to do. Shout out to Jake, but I probably don't want to have a ton of time in Minneapolis in February. So, I mean, Towns is just going to be playing Fortnite before games. Butler's just going to be playing Yo Girl.
Yeah, I wonder if that's true.
I don't know.
So this is weird. I got 150 lineups with 3 uniques, or with 5 uniques, but I only got 133 with 3 uniques.
That's really weird. California Cool says, I'm looking at picks. Can't blame him. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't expect Towns or any real NBA player to be just digging the bottom of the barrel unless it's some really nice person that's known this girl forever. But if you have the ability to just swipe whatever direction you swipe in Tinder, I have no idea. I've never used it. But like, If your entire life is just the ability to swipe through all of the not great people, it's gonna be real difficult to not have one that's a dime.
Yeah. Okay, so that crunch is done with the 5 uniques. Still would have gotten second place, but a higher score at 224.95 with a 0 from Jose Ramirez.
Okay. And that's no stack whatsoever.
No stack whatsoever. Next highest was 216.3, which would have been third place. Well, I guess fourth place if you include our other one.
What kind of stacks are you getting by not having stacks?
Nothing. So the top lineup was a 3-man Indian stack with Lynn. Scrolled too far. I know it had Ramirez. I think it was Ramirez. There. Okay, Ramirez, Lindor, Brantley, and then it was all one-offs. Narvaez, Dozier, Jeanette, Stanton, Kristen Stewart, with Gossman and Cody Reed. The team in second, I don't think had a stack at all.
I'm starting to like this idea, but it scares the shit out of me.
Yeah, the team in second had no stack. It had Scooter Jeanette and Eugenio Suarez for the Reds 2-man. Oh, and it had Dozier and Jorge Bonifacio, so Kansas City 2-man. Narvaez, Lindor, Hicks, Kristen Stewart, with Scherzer, Vargas. Third place team scored 209. That one has 2 Tigers, Ronnie Rodriguez and Kristen Stewart, 2 Indians, Encarnacion and Brantley, and then one-offs with Scherzer, Vargas.
Why am I not getting... So I'm running this crunch, the one where Althair hit the double dong, but he's not even in this, unless I'm spelling his name wrong. Oh, no, I'm on pitchers. That makes way more sense. Yeah, I don't get to any Althair because Fantasy Cruncher had him projected for 5.65 fantasy points, and he double donged off of Chen.
Yeah, that sucks. So I guess that's one point though. Like if you're like, obviously we're kind of like rushing through this, but if you're actually playing around with an idea like this and trying to figure out if it's viable or not, to recreate it as closely as you can to what you would actually do. Like if you're projected, if you would have had Aaron Althair, go ahead and make sure he's in your lineups.
Yeah.
Like even if Cruncher's projections aren't.
Yeah, because you're just not getting Althair because of this specific instance. You're also not supposed to get him a lot.
Right.
Like, there's a reason he was 5% owned. Right. So I'm trying to help Will here in the chat. I want to get a mix of 4-4 and 4-3 in the same crunch. Yeah, that's not something that you can do without running 2 separate crunches. Unless you want to get into checking the box about including your pitcher. That'll get you there, but also get you there in a weird way. But you cannot do it like that. So what you would want to do then, let's say you were running 150 lines and you wanted 4 4s and 4 3 1s. You would need to run 75 4 4s and then go back and do 75 4 3 1s. No other way to do that.
Yeah, but if you do it with the calculate more lineups, it'll keep your exposures how you wanted them.
Yes.
So it'll be like having one crunch.
Yeah. And you can copy and paste and move lineups across to different crunches. So you can combine them easy into one big file. But yeah, you would have to adjust your settings accordingly on both. Okay, what about this additional thought? We have probably 10 more minutes or so before we get out of here. What if you tried to stack every team with a 3-man? Lock yourself into getting, some of everybody in a little bit of a chunk, but most of your lineup, 5 of the other 8 spots are going to be just quality hitters.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense. The thing that scares me there is just you still end up with such like a like all your lineups are I don't know how I don't know like the right way to put it. It's like most of your lineups are going to end up with a really unproductive part of them because like most teams aren't going to blow up. So you still kind of will end up having, so if there's 28 teams on the slate, you would end up if you stacked each team an equal amount. What's that, like 3% or something?
Yeah,
Um,
essentially.
so like let's say you have 5% of every team or whatever. Like there's going to be two teams maybe that the stack is scores enough to win the slate. So now you're down to like 10% of your lineups, and it's harder to you're less likely to have like that right combination of all your other one-offs. Whereas if you don't force like all those stacks, you're still going to end up with a lot of like natural mini stacks because the best players are going to be in more lineups, obviously.
Sure.
And so I just think it like increases the likelihood of actually getting that right combination of one-offs in the right lineup.
No, that makes sense. I just set it now to 5% on this 15 gamer. So in theory, we'll be getting every single team most of the time in 3-mans. And that's across 150 lineups. That's what, 5 each on a full slate? So 5 lineups, 5 3-man stacks of everybody.
Yeah. Okay.
Probably. I mean, it's going to be 6 and 4 on some of these.
Right. Yeah. And how many uniques did you do?
4. This would have been from September 14th, where the extra inning needed 200 and change. I'm not going to get anywhere near there, but if I can get up in the 180s, 190s, I'll be happy. Just not going to get any else there. I haven't changed his projection or anything, and he's just not going to show up besides just pure shit luck. Unless it catches just because of using this force feeding of teams. So that's 1 3-man stack of almost every team. The rest of it is just grab bag. Highest I got 172. Now that is the highest that I've gotten in this process the entire time. It's still miles from the top.
But again, that's without Altair probably.
Yeah, so let's hop over to, what was it, 2 days ago that it was a 14 gamer?
I believe so, yeah.
Or was it Tuesday?
Whatever day I wrote, so Tuesday, I think.
All right, I'm just gonna do it on this night, on the 19th, the 10 gamer. This would be the extra inning that had the 205.5 total. I think there's something to this where you want to have bits of every team, but you're not going crazy on that team because you're just loading up on 75% one-offs.
And yeah, it makes sense. I guess that makes sense too, because it's not like you only have like you're still going to get a bunch of the best players from other teams, mixed in as one-offs.
Yeah. So let's see, there were 10 games, so that's 20. So to get everybody, that's 5%. I can keep that same ratio. 4 uniques. A little bit of randomness just to make this thing go faster. I think that having 30% max on a hitter is probably reasonable on a 10-game slate. You could probably go a little bit higher. I'll go 40 on pitchers. I want to crack this code, man. I'm running out of time to bink the minimax.
Yeah, I'm going through now yesterday with, I don't know how many lineups I'll be able to get, but taking my my player pool and my exposures from yesterday and doing 3-man stacks and seeing what I get.
There you go. So I essentially know that I need Luke Voit or Steven Piscotty in some form or fashion. Voit going for 40 with a double dong. Piscotty 31 with 5 RBI. So those guys are going to be essential. Luke Voit came up in exactly 0 crunches. Great start. Highest score from 2 days ago would have been not high at all. 164. Nowhere near the top. Good to know. No Luke Voit. No Piscotti at all. Oh, no, there's a Piscotti.
So I guess something else to note, since you would be narrowing down your player pool a little bit more, is I think it's important to kind of, and it's where my process differs if I'm not stacking, um, not thinking so much about projections, especially on the cheap guys, but thinking more about upside. So like you should prefer someone like Luke Voigt over some $3,500 guy who Victor Martinez. Victor Martinez, he kind of makes sense if you're stacking the Tigers because he's sitting in the middle of the order, but he's just so unlikely to give you that outlier game like Luke Voigt can. So you should prefer the more volatile guys, especially when you're looking at the value plays. If these guys end up in your lineup, you still want them because it's a one-off and they're not correlated to anyone. You want them to, on their own, be able to score a lot of points.
Yeah, and that's something that I do. I don't set broad-based randomness. I have randomness tied to a formula that I created based on basically power potential. So guys that are big sluggers are going to have a higher randomness number. Guys, your D Gordon types are going to have very low to no randomness, so that as this is cycling through, guys like Luke Voigt will pop up with higher projections, whereas those other guys will be stagnant. So on my own personal data, I think that works out well. I just opened my data for September 19th. I realized that I still had all of this sort of stuff. So I'm going to plug in my actual randomness numbers and everything and then run this crunch again instead of just having the broad base. Because I had like a decent amount of Luke Voigt that day. So I didn't get him at all here. And I think it's because of changing some of my baseline stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I still have all of my files, so I'm just gonna keep an eye on it and hope I get some Luke Voigt. He's just gonna be in a tough spot because I think that I'm gonna have to get him in those forced 3-man Yankee stacks. He's not really someone that's just gonna naturally come up as the best first base option out of 20 plus first base options on a given day.
Yeah, exactly. But I do think, and that's a really good point you made about the individual randomness numbers. It's like he's never going to come up if you're taking his median projection. But if you have a higher randomness number on him, you could get him, kind of just thrown into a couple of lineups as a one-off.
Tom says, that's an awesome idea, Josh. Those are the only ones I have, boss. You could say that idea was awesome-o. That's certainly how I would type it because this website has ruined the ability to type the word awesome.
All right, so I just got done. Still the same exposure caps that I had yesterday, same player pool, fantasy cruncher projections, not my projections, but I did 3-man stacks with 3-man stacks, 10% cap on each team. My highest score was 226.45, which I think would have been second. Yeah, would have been second place by a point in the $10. Then it drops all the way to 190.3. So my highest scoring team was like 7 points higher scoring than when I wasn't stacking at all. But I had, I think, 3 teams in that crunch over 200, whereas in this one I've won.
God, see, when I do stuff like this, or just in our conversations now, I could sit here for 8 more hours and do this.
Yeah,
and just spit all the stuff and do it.
I'm actually pretty mad at myself that I don't do this more often because for most of my like DFS time, I haven't been I had handmade all my lineups, so I didn't really use Cruncher, and I never really like played around and realized all the stuff you could actually do with it.
Yeah, it's getting better and better and better. I love it so much. I actually probably need to. I have like manual adjustments in here that I need to take out too. We'll go like 2 more minutes. I want to get to. All right, here's a question in the chat from T McB. What's the highest randomness you're using for hitters? If you're projecting someone for say 10 and you use 25% randomness, that's only bouncing his projection by 2.5% in either direction, right? Yeah, so if you have 25% randomness on and you have someone projected for 10, each time that it's calculating a line, it's going to put you in between 7.5 and 12.5. So good question on my ranges. So like I have Judge on this particular day. at 21% randomness, I had Alcides Escobar at 0. So generally speaking, 20 to 25% is going to be the most on an individual guy. That can probably be bigger. This is something that I've only worked into my stuff fairly recently, so
I wish you could do like for someone like Escobar. I wish you could like give them randomness, but only have it go one direction.
yeah. Well, in theory, there's a way to do that where you would drop down their actual projections to give you like
Okay.
the sort of bell curve range that you're looking for. But yeah, I mean, what you're saying is you want to use a different distribution than a
Right.
normal distribution.
I never want Escobar scoring more than what I have him projected for, but I also don't want in some lineups him to be projected higher than the guy who has 20% randomness. That you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
if I have Escobar projected for 6 and someone else projected for 8, and Escobar at 0% randomness, and the 8 guy at 40% because of his upside, I don't want him projected less than Escobar ever.
Yeah. No, exactly. There's a path to that in some way. I think Escobar and Aaron Judge are like the perfect 2-man combo to talk about because, I mean, obviously Escobar's projection is going to be garbage, but Judge has the ability to double dong significantly more than almost anybody else in the league. You want,
Right.
While his projection might be 10, his range of outcomes is significantly higher than 10, whereas Alcides Escobar needs to basically go 4 for 4 with some stolen bases and stuff to get to Judge's ceiling.
Exactly.
Makad, what does the unique setting do in Fantasy Cruncher versus randomness? I've always just used randomness. So in theory, they go hand in hand. You can use one without the other. Randomness is going to be just individual player projections. Uniques, and the easiest way to describe it would be to show it. So on the first 2 lineups you crunch, if you have it set to 1 unique, it's probably just going to change one specific guy in that particular line. And then the third line that it calculates, it needs to make sure that it's one off from the previous 2, and so on and so on and so on. When you set that to 3 or 4, it's taking out large swaths of lineups and never letting any lineup have more than 3 changes. Did I say that correctly?
Yep.
So like the more uniques you have, the less overlap every single lineup will have. So if you're using more uniques, you'll probably want to use less randomness. If you're using more randomness, you'll want to use less uniques. Otherwise, you're going to be going dramatically too unique, so to speak.
Like you're at that point, you're going to start getting your 120th lineup just being like absolute dog shit.
Yep. Yeah, T McBee, good explanation there. Randomness calculates a new projection each time, whereas uniques just make sure you don't duplicate guys.
Right. Yeah. So like basically with uniques, you're using your best projections every single time. It's just giving you your second best projected lineup that's at least 1 player or 3 players different or whatever from what you already have.
Yeah. Last one I'm going to try. 2 separate 2-man stacks capped at 5%. So I want to get all different sorts of combinations of every team and then load up on the bats that I like the most. Miss J says, I love that, Josh. I don't know what I said, but I'm happy that you love it. I have no memory. I'm like a goldfish. Something comes out of my mouth, and 30 seconds later, it's just gonzo. So
yeah, I mean, I try not to listen to myself talk as much as possible.
Yeah, it's tough sometimes. Actually, can't do that double 2-man stack, so I'm just going to force it to 5. This will be the last one before we get out of here. I don't know what I'm going to do. On a day like today, I'm still going to have my normal stacking, although instead of going 5-man, I think I might drop to 4. But on a smaller slate, I think that I'm going to be playing a lot more individual guys, combinations of 1s and 2s. I see the merit in it, especially after seeing the way that people are pinch hitting.
Yeah, I'm still not planning on stacking today just because I'm digging my heels in and going down with this if it doesn't work. But I agree completely that there's more merit to it the smaller the slate is. I just did another I just did another crunch with the same, like my player pool, my ownership caps, and 2 uniques instead of 3 no stacks from yesterday. My high score was only 209, so not as high as when I did it with 3 uniques, not as high as when I did the mini stacks, but I have like 5, 6, 7 lineups over 200 points.
Oh, okay. What did you say those settings were?
2 uniques instead of 3 with no stacks. Or no 4 stacks. I mean, it still gives me some, but
yeah, no stacks. 2 uniques instead of 3.
yeah. So my highest scoring lineup wasn't as high as when I did 3, and I don't think I even matched my second highest scoring lineup, but I had more over 200.
What was your? These are all your individual exposures.
Yeah, my exposures, my player pool, fantasy cruncher projections.
Okay. I just went to no stacks, 2 uniques with same exposures across the board, but my personal caps, and then my own individual randomness. And this would have been for Tuesday the 19th. Nope. Yep. What's today? Wednesday the 19th. Fuck, dates.
Yeah.
I get to anything good? 146. I certainly did not. So something to still play around with. I'm going to dig into this even more today after I pick out some of the trees and branches and shit that are all over my house. But I think this was a good deep dive.
Yeah, I think it was fun. I wish we had done it. I wish it was something that I thought of as soon as rosters expanded. Hopefully, I remember next September.
Yeah, Will.
But also something to
go ahead.
Pay attention to earlier in the season. I mean, I don't know.
Absolutely.
Done it.
Will in the chat. This is the best YouTube video I've ever watched on DFS. Couldn't agree more. We are the best. Adam, anything to plug right now? Lofty's deeper dive, I guess, or the deep dive. I can't remember which one's which. The deeper dive's the video, right?
Yeah. So the deep dive article Lofty will have out at probably around 3 Eastern, and then Lofty and I will be on the deeper dive show at 4:45, 5-ish Eastern.
There you go. We're going to do more stuff like this. I'm going to put together a little bit of a plan, go through some settings as well, and we can maybe do a more organized version of this instead of just the off the cuff. But, it's the type of stuff that I want to be doing, is doing big-time dig-ins to Fantasy Cruncher, specifically now that they are a partner.
Yeah.
So, Adam, anything else?
No. Excited to play around with this and see what I end up with later today.
Same, man. Same. All right. Best of luck, everybody. Tune in to the rest of the shows later today. Ooh, there you go. Tom in the chat, quick, last plug. If you use the coupon code THEPROCESS, one big word, the process, get you 1 free week at awesemo.com. Free for everything. All access. You get it all, including some access to Fantasy Cruncher. So if you want to check that out, the process as a promo code, awesemo.com. Do it. Join us. We're taking over. Bye.